Whoosh, whoosh. I can't take you seriously. I know, because I know that you watch the show, and I know that you know my moves before I make them. It's just hard, man. It's hard. It's hard. It's just sometimes some shows are easy. This is not going to be the easiest show for me because you're so in it, man. You know all my moves, damn it.
Matt, you're like an open book, but we're getting after it this season. We're crushing it. I'm so happy to be back on Mind a Mansion. This is awesome.
I know. I feel like we're cheating on Alan a little bit. I feel bad. I mean, it's almost like we should dial in Alan and patch him in or something just to let him know that, hey, we're doing a show without you. It's technically a different show, and it's okay if we're not doing a show with you. I mean, you guys did some shows without me, during the off season when I was traveling. Those were good shows. These were really great shows. Alan's doing great. Alan's very busy, man. RotoWire's they've hitched, a plow to Alan, these RotoWire people.
Yeah, RotoWire, Sirius Satellite Radio, the Sonic Truth podcast. Alan is one of the busiest guys in the business, one of the best hosts in the business. He's really, really good and really, really does a lot for us at Player Profiler. And I love how the dichotomy of Alan, though, because we get him on Sonic Truth podcast, and it's like, I mean, he's pushing the limits of what an R rating would be with some of the discussion. But then you see him at his home base with RotoWire and Sirius. Oh, yeah. It's like a PG Alan, maybe PG-13 at times at night, but you see all sides of Alan. It's great.
Well, it's very much like the Full House, right? Yes. Bob Saget.
That's a great reference. Bob Saget, the filthy comedian, and then and the everyman father sitcom star who's very much a PG, maybe G level. Yeah, but on stage he's complete filth.
Yeah, we're the comedy store for Alan to vent his filthiness. And then he goes to his real job, which is Full House, which is RotoWire. It's perfect.
We're like a confessional booth too, in a sense. I think he always wants to get some of these old things off his chest too, which is also we appreciate for the comedic aspect of Sonic Truth. It's amazing.
And you're absolutely destroying. I don't know how you have so much time to do all these articles. You are clearly our most popular writer. Right, you are the reason why so many people are going to the articles and analysis section on PlayerProfiler.com. You do a waiver wire article. Talk about the articles you write every week.
So thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Yeah, I do put a lot of time into them, and I'll say that I've written the waiver wire column in some form or another. I did it on Breakout Finder for like a year or two, and then I have written it on Player Profiler for like this is my third year. So I'd say it makes you a faster writer to know that you have only so much time to get out a waiver wire article. So it's made me a faster writer in general. But yeah, I do the 2-minute drill, which sort of came about where I felt like I could squeeze one more in, and it's just kind of gone off the rails, but it's a lot of fun to write, where that drops on Mondays, and it's kind of like my fantasy reactions, some NFL reactions for the week. And it helps kind of get me prepared for my podcast and prepared for my waiver wire article as well. But that drops on Mondays. Then as I'm finishing the 2-minute drill, I am also writing the waiver wire column. And I try to write the waiver wire column while I'm watching football. So I'll squeeze in one breakdown, then keep it going. So I'm kind of writing 2 articles at once. Then the waiver wire article drops on Tuesdays. And then I'm doing the sleepers article, which shout out to Ryan Lopes. I had this dumpster dive article back in the day. And,
on Breakout Finder.
Year we also, on Breakout Finder, we had the dumpster dive, which was a pretty fun article. And I had pretty good success with that. And it's kind of like the guys who slip through waivers and some of the guys who don't kind of cross that 25% on Yahoo or Sleeper or wherever, format you're playing on. But those kind of the under the radar guys. And when one of them scores a touchdown, you feel like you really helped somebody. And it's kind of like a future waiver wire article. So yeah, it's we're rolling, and then we have the podcast going.
Whoa, let me guess. Michael Wilson was featured in this.
Michael Wilson's been on this one. I think last week was actually a Rondell Moore made it, so I completely misread it. Drew Petzing was praising Rondell Moore. about how they're going to use him as this weapon. And, he had the rushing opportunities in week 3. He has the touchdown run. They're lining him up a traditional running back. He was a little bit of like the buzz guy. Michael Wilson's a guy, though, Matt, we've been talking about for months. Like, this is a player profiler, and this is a Matt Kelly guy. When we had Dynasty Week in the Roto Underworld, where we dedicated an entire week of content to Dynasty, it was a lot of fun. We had people that don't usually discuss Dynasty, like Billy Muzio, were doing only Dynasty content. It was really, really fun. And we did a flag plant video on a player that we really loved in Dynasty in general, and you could have picked anybody. And I don't recall who your flag plant player was. I recall your flag plant rookie, and your flag plant rookie was Michael Wilson. My flag plant rookie was Marvin Mims, but you were able to get Michael Wilson in like the 3rd round of rookie drafts anytime you wanted.
Every time.
Or you could get him in the 4th round sometimes, because a lot of these wide receivers fall to like that 3rd round and they just get pushed down. Like this year, Tank Dell, Michael Wilson, they were going behind Josh Downs, and Josh Downs has been fine, but Michael Wilson looks like a proper outside receiver. He's got the alpha frame. So this is a player profiler guy. You were on him at the Senior Bowl. You were flag planting him at the Senior Bowl. Shout out to anybody who tracks the Podfathers guys. Matt was all over Michael Wilson. If you listen to Matt, you'd have Michael Wilson and you'd have Luke Musgrave in every single rookie draft, because you get those guys late and they were right there for you. So big shout out, Matt. You were all over Michael Wilson. He looks like the real deal. And Josh Dobbs looks a lot better than we ever thought he'd look.
How about Josh Dobbs? Dobbs saving some people in these 2 QB and superflex leagues where things go wrong with your quarterback, right? And I was in a bunch of these leagues where I had a Ryan Tannehill type quarterback, a Derek Carr type quarterback, and then no one behind him. Sometimes you have to make deals where people are sending you these Godfather offers for your quarterback in 2 QB and superflex dynasty leagues, and you just have to accept it. You have to accept it because the math says you go to the Dynasty Dominator app, you go to the Dynasty Deluxe Trade Analyzer on Player Profiler, and it's like, yeah, this is a smash. You have to do it. And you're like, well, I don't really have a quarterback. What am I going to... A quarterback always emerges. I remember as soon as I got the news, it's going to be Josh Dobbs, boom, I knew there was like 3 teams where I had to get Josh Dobbs because it's literally I'm hanging on by a Tannehill, and you don't want to have that. And then all of a sudden there's an injury, right? There's an injury to Bryce Young. There's an injury to Derek Carr. There's an injury to Aaron Rodgers, right? I was surprised. I had Aaron Rodgers in a bunch of leagues, and I didn't even realize. I was like, I don't remember how I ended up getting Aaron Rodgers in the Superflex League. Maybe it was a lot of these are like orphans I've taken over, and I couldn't get rid of him. So I just said, you know what? I'm riding Aaron Rodgers. That's it. I'm trying to win, whatever. And then poof, he's gone. Maybe never comes back. But yeah, Josh Dobbs, man. I mean, I was like, well, Josh Dobbs has mobility. He was always an intriguing guy in Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens. He certainly has the weapons, right? It's the case for Josh Dobbs is, do you have a Marquise Brown stretching the field? Do you have 2 tight ends that can catch the football? Do you have a gadget guy in Rondale Moore? Do you have a proper alpha? Do you have the requisite skills in the wide receiver room to elevate a quarterback? Arizona actually did. Arizona's wide receiver core much better than anyone was thinking about heading into this season. And now you look, like I said, you look down the board, you've got the perfect Z in Marquise Brown. You got a true alpha in Michael Wilson. You've got the perfect sort of, gadget Y player in Rondale Moore. It's great. It's great. Now, I mean, I wish for a little bit more from Trey McBride, but congratulations to Zach Ertz for coming back. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's good.
Zach Ertz has 3 games with 8 or more targets. 2 of them 10-target games. So Josh Dobbs, he does
Isn't
a lot
that
of things
crazy?
we like for. Yeah, we love it though, because it's predictable usage with Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs has had 3 straight games with 40 or more rushing yards. So he's a little bit insulated in his production with the rush attempts. And like you said, he's very good at running the football, and he's putting the football in some tight pockets on some of these completions. And now you're starting to see a chemistry with the big three receivers he has with Hollywood, Michael Wilson, and Zach Ertz. They're a fun team because they really, really try. And I think Petzing is a good offensive coordinator who's put a number of these guys in good spots. And Matt, they're a live dog this week again. Cincinnati coming into Arizona, like Dallas. This is a fun game.
Yeah, that is a fun game. That is fun. There's multiple quarterbacks that are essentially what we wanted Kenny Pickett to be.
Yes.
Right? We've got Sam Howell. He's what I wanted Kenneth Pickett Sr. to be. Josh Dobbs. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. That's what I just didn't get what we wanted from Kenneth Pickett Sr. It's not good. We'll get into it in the show. I think we'll start to I think we can kind of start the engines to kind of start the show here, right? You know how this works. You know how we do it over here. Coming over. I just love that you started with the breakout finder. I just love that was how you were introduced. Ryan Lopes. Nate List, by the way. Nate List not returning my texts now.
Whoa.
Yeah. I texted him a couple questions just to see if he would respond. Nothing. Right? Because I tried complimenting him, and then he wouldn't respond to that. So then I tried asking him questions. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. The hero of content at Player Profiler. An OG, a high-stakes player, a dynasty player. A guy who is the up-and-coming talent in the industry. Here with me today, it is Theo Gremminger. Talk to me.
I'm fired up, Matt. This is my third time on Mind a Mansion. Ooh. Once as a guest with you as well, and then Billy Muzio and I traded spots with you during crossover week, and I hosted a Mind a Mansion with Billy Muzio, and we had Sean Corner from the Action Network. So this is way more fun being in the guest seat. You get the cool introduction. I had to try to do it on my own, but Matt, you're the GOAT. It's the best intro song in the business, the best intro in the business. Holding it down, Mind a Mansion, legendary podcast.
I loved it when the crossover week was genius idea. That was your idea?
Yeah. Crossover week, Dynasty week. Yeah, we had we crushed it. Crossover week, we'll do it again this offseason, was awesome. We basically exchanged hosts for all of our podcasts. We did some very cool things with our programming partners, where the Deep End and the GOAT District and First and 15 drafted against one another in an FFPC draft, and it was like the three different stories of the same draft. It was very cool. Shout out to those guys. And then we exchanged hosts for everything. At Sonic Truth podcast, we had Alan with Jax Falcone and Memphis Young. And then Billy and I did Mind a Mansion. Billy and Matty Kiwoom did first press coverage, and then First Class Fantasy. I don't even remember what we did. Somebody else took First Class Fantasy.
You're not supposed to remember who hosted every show a particular week of the year. Everyone should be subscribing to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more subscribers we get, the more shows we can get. Because basically, as our YouTube channel grows, we can go to hosts around the industry that host shows and be like, hey, would you like to record your podcast while streaming on Player Profiler? And we've gone to so many people, like the GOAT District and many others, and said, hey, would you like to kind of be part of our network? And we'll help you manage your stream. We'll help you manage your podcast. And so if anyone out there has any kind of podcast audience and they want to join up like Voltron with us and start streaming to a wider audience, we can help you. It's been great, and you've really spearheaded the whole partnership program to bring in a lot of these shows. We've got the Undrafted on the podcast network. We've done so many different things, and brought in so many new people. Chris Vaccaro and Nando DeFino doing the Fantasy Empire show, and I'm getting to know a lot of these people through you.
Yeah.
Like, you know so many people. You're such a tastemaker in the industry, and it's just such a blessing that we have you here. And then to create the lineup that you've created, we brought in Tara Roberts doing the Dear Ms. Fantasy show. I thought that was very cool. And so tune in for that. That's on our podcast feed. That's on our podcast channel. You should watch it on YouTube as well. So, and you run content at Player Profiler. That's what you do, right? So just give us a snapshot of your day. What does your day look like running content? What does it mean? I know you're coming up with all these great ideas like crossover week, and you're introducing so many new talented people to our enterprise, but just walk us through a day in the life.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, Matt. Yeah, it's a role that I am very honored to have, and I take a lot of pride in it. I think that we are putting out some of the best content in the industry. We're doing a lot of very cool things that I think a lot of our competitors are not doing, and we've been innovative. And I think that a big hat tip to you. You don't micromanage me on this. I think that you have allowed us to kind of go out and do things that we think are proper, and then when you see a hole in it, you're able to tell me, hey, we need to do this. So it's definitely a great resource to have you and Billy to bounce things off of. But a day in the life in season, I'll spend a lot of time speaking to Seth Dywald and Joel Ybarra, our editors, on articles. I spent a lot of time speaking to Matty Kiwoom and Seth Dywald, making sure everything is properly set up for streams. I end up discussing a lot of like little things and having a lot of small conversations throughout the week with a number of our content creators, whether they're, the programming partners or they're, somebody who just records podcasts for us. I'd like to say that I'm touching base with a lot of people on little small conversations, and occasionally we have something important to take care of. But throughout the week, it's mostly that we're a well-oiled machine in terms of written content, in terms of podcasts, and then we have a really growing amount of video content, which I think is very cool. We worked on it this summer together with a number of our content creators to try to get these things going. You've recorded a number of great videos for us, so that we're basically hitting things on three heads. And then we also want to make sure everything is lined up perfectly for our podcasts. We're still like, YouTube is very cool, but the podcast, we want to make sure everything's going well in terms of when they're dropping, making sure everything's on time, making sure everything's high quality. And it's been fantastic. I'd say during the season is a lot more regimented and streamlined than the off season, where off season we're kind of still putting things together. Now we're making sure everything's going smoothly. If you're following Player Profiler, if you're listening to our podcast, you know that this is coming out when. And yeah, it's I wear many different hats, but at the end of the day, the most important one is that it's quality. We've been able to bring in really good people, and there's also great people working with Player Profiler. Like when I started this role, so it's made everything great. Like the social media team, everybody is top notch here, and everybody has a great deal of pride in the product they're putting out, and that's kind of made the job a lot easier. But yeah, it's a grind, Matt. But I'll say this, and I think you can appreciate this, is it's kind of like the most wonderful thing is when you're deep in fantasy football, and this is for fantasy football players as well. There's sort of a cyclical nature of it where you set your watch to knowing what you're doing throughout the week. And when you're a content creator, it's that kind of on steroids, but I like it. During the offseason, things come up and it's wild, but in season, I kind of know exactly. It's like kind of like the military. You know what you have to do. You have an assignment. And if one thing falls apart, like a lot of people kind of suffer from it. So it's keep everything smooth and everything moving well.
Yeah, you make my life really easy. And I knew you'd be the right guy for the job because, you're all the way bought in. You were interested in having a stake in the business before you ever even, started putting this much sweat equity into it. And now that I'm also happy that we have an equity plan for all our directors and our biggest contributors can all now be part of an equity plan, and that meant a lot to me. So I was like, okay, if we're gonna do an investment round, we should also at the same time pair that with an equity plan for employees, right? And you just have, so you're double dipping.
Yes.
Right, you're basically double dipping. You're getting an equity plan, but you also invested on your own, and so that means a lot to me. And I can you can feel it. There's a reason why you want to get a sense of people. If you are in a position where you can get, we're very fortunate that we're in a position where we can get a sense of people before we give them huge opportunities. A lot of organizations, they just have to gamble that they're going to give this person a big job and hope they deliver, whereas we are able to feel people out a little bit and give them smaller roles and then see how they do. As soon as you came to me and said, "Hey, listen, I want a bigger role," it was instant. It was a rare thing that I was like, okay, yeah, this is a no-brainer. So you are a no-brainer, and you are, someone that your contributions mean a lot to me. Also, just our phone calls, like talking to you at 10:30 at night. Sometimes it's about soccer. Sometimes it's not even about the company. And whenever I call you, man, you pick up and you're like, talk to me, and I love it. I love it because I know where that comes. I'm like, that's my man, and I can even. I sometimes I lip it. Like I'll mouth it. I know you're about to say talk to me, and I know how many rings you're going to pick up on. That's the relationship we have, and it's incredible.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's like you bring up being able to be in the organization and kind of rise up. I love that about Player Profiler because I think that it would be difficult for me to tell people what to write if I didn't write for years, and it would be difficult for me to tell people the quality of podcasts if I didn't podcast for a while before I kind of took it over. So it's like when you wear a bunch of different hats in a company and kind of move up, it's just like anything else in life. I think you kind of appreciate the role, and you also understand the amount of time people are putting in with their own roles. And I really do genuinely appreciate the hard work from not only our staff, but the content creators we have working with us. Because people are grinding. I mean, it's a real grind. Yeah, but really crushing it. So,
and I try to lead by example. So people like, I can't believe I'm working on an article at 11 o'clock at night, and then Matt's online.
Yeah, and I'll say,
when did I send you the show sheet last night?
I might have been asleep when you sent me the show sheet, but I'll say, like, people don't know this about Matt, and Matt's not a person like, like. When you have a fantasy take that's correct, you'll let everybody know about it. But your work ethic's not something that you're constantly beating a drum on and saying, look at me, I work so hard. Like, Matt puts in a tremendous amount of time and energy. And I think you also have a great attention to detail. And I think like you're constantly working on something Player Profiler related, like all the time. And when it's like a VOD, and I'll say, Matt, can you do a video about like handcuff running backs? Matt will spend like hours and hours and hours like editing it, getting it perfect. Like it's definitely appreciated. It's definitely noticed. And yeah, man, you grind as hard as anybody in the industry. And I don't think everybody knows that about you. For somebody kind of who doesn't necessarily have to at this point as much, you're a well-known guy in the industry, but you're still just putting in the work, grinding, leading by example with that sort of work ethic. And I think that's a big hat tip to you.
Yeah, I can't ask people to go above and beyond if they don't see me doing the same thing. It's just a very basic principle. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable. It wouldn't even be appropriate for me to ask what I ask of people, because I ask a lot of people if they didn't also know that I'm not on the horse, right? Yes, there's certain people, hey, I'm going to ride into battle with you, but I'm on a horse and you guys are marching on the ground. No, I'm on the ground. I'm digging. Give me a shovel. That's my attitude. So yeah, I kind of, we're kind of like Belichick and Matt Patricia, right? Isn't that?
Yeah.
We got to
pick a new team.
You see, that used to be, the funny thing is, that used to be a huge compliment. Right. And then remember Matt Patricia, he was so well regarded that he took a big head coaching job in Detroit once upon a time. And now, Theo, I can't believe it. If I compare myself to Bill Belichick, you made a face. You made a disgusting, you smelled something foul when I compared myself to Bill Belichick. That's where we are now. Bill Belichick is dust. Does he make it to the end of the season?
I think he makes it. He definitely makes it to the end of the season.
Definitely?
I don't think that they would. Yeah, they're not going to fire Bill Belichick. And I don't think he's the type to kind of say this isn't working. I want to get out of here.
What if they're 1-16?
Finishes.
Can you imagine? Can you? I mean, this is the. I mean, I haven't seen anything from them that suggests they can win games.
It's terrible, and they're in the worst division for this because he's had. Well, look, we'll take a step back. He's had losing seasons in 2 out of the last 3 years. The 1 year he makes the playoffs, he gets absolutely blown out. The whole argument, the Brady versus Belichick, very, very good breakdown by the Podfather on top 10 takeaways this week about it. But it's Brady. Brady wins. You're seeing kind of what's going on, and it's incredible ineptitude with offensive personnel decision making.
Yes.
Yes. It's just incredible. It's hard to be this wrong.
Yes.
Over the years. I mean, the Jacoby Myers, the choice of going from Jacoby Myers to Juju Smith-Schuster, it's like that's like you could have had about the same contract for Jacoby Myers as you paid Juju. It was not that much more. And, Jacoby Myers looks really good in Vegas, and Juju
they
looks like
discovered Jacoby Myers. They plucked him out of obscurity. He was undrafted. How do you not extend that guy early? If you are self-scouting, you scouted so well at NC State to find him. He was super productive, just a total target hog. And you forget to extend him? Like
it's arrogance.
It's just weird. It's just so weird.
It's arrogance to me that I think Bill Belichick looks at a guy like Jacoby Myers and thinks I can just plug in another guy and find somebody else, and it doesn't matter. I'm not going to overpay somebody that I got as an undrafted free agent. And that's pretty much his. I think there's a lot of arrogance with his decision making. The Zeke Elliott signing, there was some arrogance there, and the elevated role for Zeke Elliott. It's kind of like a team that has no real sense of direction. The Ramondre Stevenson offense was limited, but working better last year than what we're seeing, certainly against Dallas. We had some signs of hope in that first game against Philly, but ever since then, it's just been kind of ineptitude. You put in Zappy against Dallas. That was Bill Belichick's worst loss of his entire career against Dallas on Sunday. It's completely falling off. They don't have an answer at quarterback. The wide receiver position is just a disgrace there in terms of what they're putting out there. And the one guy, the guy Pops Douglas or Pop Douglas, whatever they're calling him. Douglas has like a little bit of juice, and he looks like the kind of guy that needs to get more touches. And we haven't really seen that. So it's kind of like the whole organization, it's kind of going in two directions. I liked the Bill O'Brien hire, but you kind of liked it because he'd had such ineptitude at the offensive coordinator position before there that it's like you finally get a professional coming in, but Bill O'Brien's not the answer. Yeah, Matt, it's
what are you going to do?
But he will...
No one can fix this offense. Their point differential is -42, and the only win they have is against Zach Wilson.
Yeah,
so get out of here. I mean, it's
very rough.
If they don't win another game the rest of the season, I would be surprised, but not totally and utterly shocked. Right? Because actually the Jets' point differential is -22. I mean, I know that New England's played the Dolphins. They've played the Cowboys. It's some tough games. I get it. But this is bad. This is really, really bad. And for anyone that is railing against, ranting against coach worship as I do, we all win. That this is a huge W. You can't understate what a giant win this is for anyone that is against coach worship in sports analysis, fantasy analysis, this is a huge win. Bill Belichick, widely regarded as the greatest coach in NFL history, on par with Tom Brady in terms of the responsibility for all those championships, those 6 championships, and now he's being totally exposed. It's beautiful. And I'm a Patriots fan. That's the thing. I'm a Patriots fan, but I'm also a fan of correct analysis and a rational way of observing sports. And this is a big win for rational sports consumption.
It's about the Mikes and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. And he's made bad decisions on personnel. And I think like the defensive side of the ball, they've made some very strong picks. You know, Gonzalez is a big time cornerback they took this year. And there's been a number of, and I'll say this, Matt, I don't think the wheels fall completely off because they're going to win a few home games. The defense is not bad. And they're going to price themselves out of the very top quarterbacks though. So it's going to be another bad year. Think like a 5-win season, I think 4 or 5-win season. And they'll price themselves out of Caleb Williams. They'll price themselves out of Drake May, and they'll still probably end up with a head coaching change and no answers at quarterback. I mean, another quarterback might present themselves in this draft, but Mac Jones is not the answer. Bailey Zappi's definitely not the answer. And I don't have any answers for the offense right now.
I think you see where I'm going, right? As a Patriots fan, I want the losses, right? We need these losses. We need these so we can get a quarterback upgrade. It's possible, man. I mean, there are some games on the schedule, but the problem is some of these games on the schedule, like I think you're thinking Washington at home, November 5th, very winnable. I understand that's very winnable, but Washington's been playing great.
Yeah.
Jets at home at the end of the season, that's the final game of the season. Anything can happen. Their other easy matchups, unfortunately, are on the road. They're at Las Vegas, they're at Pittsburgh in December, and they're at Denver in December as well. So there's very few games on the schedule. They're also at the Giants. So there's, like I said, 3 or 4 games where you could see, this team is going to be favored in this game, except that it's on the road. So there's almost no games on the schedule where they're going to be favored. They're going to be favored November 12th at home against the Colts. And they'll probably be favored at home against the Jets, the final game of the season. But we have no idea what both teams will look like at that point. And that's about it. I'm not convinced they're going to be favored against the Commanders at home in November. I'm not convinced of that. So we'll see what happens. But 3 or 4 wins, that's actually realistically in play for the Patriots, given what we've seen. And this is why when you are evaluating the drivers of wins and losses and fantasy points, your starting point needs to be the player, not the coach. Like, for example, in Buffalo, who's the most responsible for the winning up there? It's Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen. However, with some of these superstar stacks with the quarterback getting drafted in round 2, 3, and 4, it's a lot harder to stack with those quarterbacks than it is even Lamar Jackson was easy to stack with because his number 1 wide receiver was going after him, right? But much more straightforward to stack with a Joe Burrow, a Justin Herbert. Those are easy stacks. Did you get any Stefon Diggs, Josh Allen stacks this summer?
I looked through all my teams. Besides best ball, I don't have a single Diggs Allen. And in retrospect,
it's not easy to get though.
Yeah. But
you'd have to take Allen in the second round or hope that he slips to you in the third round.
Yeah, it was so in FFPC, Allen you could get in that third round. NFFC, Allen got steamed into the second round in a lot of drafts. Same with Hurts. Hurts would steam into the second in NFFC, third round FFPC. But in FFPC, it was actually one of the most unique stacks was to get both Philly wide receivers with Hurts. I think there's like one team in the whole 350 that has that.
Oh, wow.
It was an impossible stack. And we started talking about it and tweeting about it. And Billy and I talked about it on First Class Fantasy a little bit. And it wasn't necessarily like even the ideal way to draft, but if you're a high volume drafter, you could flex one of those teams, that would work. But
wait.
Matt,
So that's was it a mid first round? How did that play
the
out?
only
Where was Brown drafted versus Hurts versus Devontae Smith with
the only way you could do
double
it,
stack?
You would have to. So this was the other thing. The people that kept trying it would have to push AJ Brown up to like the 103 or the 104. It's the only way you could have done it because Devonta Smith. So Devonta Smith and Hurts were kind of in that little window right around the 2-3 turn, but Devonta Smith was less predictable with his ADP landing spot. Jalen Hurts, you usually knew you'd have access to him at the 2-3 turn, but Devonta Smith draft to draft could go anywhere between like 15 and 25, depending on the month and the week of the summer. He steamed up, he steamed down, he moved around. So a lot of people would get stuck with an early AJ Brown and not have the correlation, and then you feel like you lost the money in the draft. You didn't necessarily do it, but you take him there to stack. So yeah, that was definitely a very, very interesting one to do. And the Josh Allen one, sometimes you saw Josh Allen fall. Actually, I think I do have one Josh Allen team when I think about it, but it might be a 350. Josh Allen once in a while started falling to the end of the third round. When you started to see Lamar Jackson pushed up, you had like a gravitational pull where Josh Allen got pulled down a little bit because people thought that, hey, if I miss on Allen at the end of the third, I can grab Lamar Jackson at the beginning of the fourth. So, I think I have a Diggs team where it was maybe like Diggs at like the 109, and then Josh Allen falls to the 309, but you weren't like planning on Josh Allen falling to that range. He just did sometimes. So yeah, hat tip to people with the stacks. You felt great on Sunday with both of those stacks. AJ Brown, it's unbelievable what's going on with him right now. I'm glad you put him on the show sheet. I wrote about him in the 2-minute drill. Like Matt, I remember this when he's in Tennessee, he flashes so much talent. We were so excited for him to see a larger target share, and it just never happened. He would get to this, they would have a cap target number where he would struggle to get past 110. Then finally he gets to Life Raft, goes to Philadelphia, and we still had a little bit of concerns like, maybe this is going to be a 130 target guy because there's Devonta Smith there, it's a Dallas Goedert there, plus we have the quarterback who might not have the passing volume. And we get the 145 targets last year. We get the big salvation season for AJ Brown. We're so excited for him in Dynasty, so excited for where we got him in redraft. And then this offseason, it's kind of like, I love AJ Brown, but is AJ Brown kind of a purgatory player? Because I'm taking it at the end of the first round. I was getting him 12 picks later last year at the 2-3 turn. Now I'm having to take him at like the 110, the 111. Maybe he's not a guy that can get past 145 targets, and maybe Devonta Smith is more of a threat to him than we're giving him credit. But it's completely off. AJ Brown is now on target to get like 189 targets for the season. I believe it's right around at like a 185 to 190 target level. It's finally happening. We talked about it in the Sonic Truth Pod this summer a lot about how he's the kind of guy that you would bet on to lead the NFL in touchdowns. That's his path to wide receiver 1 overall. But now he's also getting the necessary targets to do it. I feel so good about AJ Brown. And the fact that they've leaned on him, 27 targets the last 2 weeks. And this is his third time, Matt. This is the third time that he's dropped a 2 touchdown or more game as a Philadelphia Eagle. He had the 3 touchdown game last year, which was like comical, where he did it in like the first half of the game. But this game was an overtime game, a divisional game, and they keep going to AJ Brown. He looks like the best player on the field. And, Devonta Smith's fine, but Devonta Smith is not the alpha. AJ Brown's the alpha. I think AJ Brown is in for such a good rest of the season. I love the way he looks. I love the way the new offensive coordinator Johnson is using him. It's back-to-back weeks of high target games. It's amazing. I love AJ Brown right now.
So he had 11 touchdowns in 2020 in only 14 games. So he almost averaged a touchdown per game in his second year in Tennessee. He had 17.7 fantasy points per game. He was the wide receiver 6 that year. He was the wide receiver 8 last year. Same points per game, same touchdown total. Here was the difference, though. 1,772 air yards last year for A.J. Brown. So he went from being a yak monster in Tennessee to being a yak monster and a guy commanding passes down the field. This is what the elite of the elite wide receivers do. They win down the field with deep bombs that they're able to secure, and they win with yak. So, we asked the question, who's going to join that Ja'Marr Chase, Justin Jefferson tier? Now it's wide open, right? Ja'Marr Chase has been a disappointment this year. My chips were on Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's been a stud all year. He's been one of the most consistent wide receiver in football. But it's A.J. Brown is the other candidate. We look back at the end of the year, and there's A.J. Brown. He's actually a top 3 dynasty receiver, a top 3 receiver in the league, period. And I would put Stefon Diggs in that category, but A.J. Brown, he's 26, right? So he put up 1,700 air yards last year at age 25. Diggs heading into his 30s, but given the offenses where they were the clear alphas, right? A.J. Brown, the clear alpha, Diggs even more the clear alpha. The upside for Diggs was arguably even higher heading into this season, knowing that it was his offense and this was a top 5 offense. It was the number 1 offense in the first half last year. So when you see these stacks coming through, you're just like, at the beginning of best ball season, 3-4 quarterbacks were actually going early to mid-second round, if you remember. And then as the summer went along, those quarterbacks started falling out of the second round into the third round. But there was an argument that Josh Allen's a first rounder in fantasy football drafts. And now looking back, it's like, yeah, you should have just drafted Diggs or A.J. Brown in the middle of the first round and just gone right back to, say, Hurts in the middle of the second round or Allen in the middle of the second round. What's the big deal? Right? Oh, I can't get him. I can't stack Diggs with Allen. I can never get him in the third round. Oh, I'm getting sniped. Just take Allen in the second round. That was the play. That was the move all along, was just to draft Allen and Hurts with their stacking partner in the second round, getting their wide receiver, their alpha wide receiver in the first round. And then when you look back, that was also one of the pick tactics that you could have employed when implementing a 0 RB strategy. That's the beauty. When you are able to just dismiss the running back position and say, you know what? Fuck running back, right? I'll start thinking about running back in round 4 with Travis Etienne. Call me in round 4. We'll talk running back, right? And then I'll go hero RB with Etienne, or I'll just keep waiting. I'll go Kenneth Walker in round 5. I'll go Rashad White in round 6. I'll go Isaiah Pacheco in round 8, on and on down the board. I got explosive runners on top offenses round after round after round after round. So I'm in no hurry to draft my running backs. And when you have that mindset, you can always make sure you're locking in a Diggs, a Brown, an Amon-Ra in round 1. Then it lets you have ultimate flexibility in round 2 to even draft a quarterback if you so choose, right? Go back to wide receiver in round 3. You could do whatever you want, right? But I think looking back, if you started wide receiver, and were able to get an Allen in the third round, wide receiver, quarterback looks like the highest floor and highest ceiling sequence of picks in seasonal leagues.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that this is something in the offseason, we'll go back and discuss again, because even though we knew the impact of the top-notch quarterbacks, you'd still kind of kind of say, you know what, but I don't want to use the draft capital on them. But there's an argument for the safety aspect, Matt, especially with all the landmine running backs that we've seen so far this season. The most dangerous position in the NFL is the running back position in terms of injuries, and you've seen it big time this year. Nick Chubb teams dead in the water. Austin Eckler teams have been nearly dead in the water. Hope with the bye that he comes back after.
Jonathan Taylor teams.
Jonathan Taylor
Jesus
teams. Saquon
Christ,
Barkley
Theo.
teams. It's
Saquon Barkley
carnage.
teams.
It's carnage, Matt.
It's total carnage. This is the problem. This is why I was like, I can't believe I'm the last man standing with 0 RB. When you start seeing RotoViz pivoting off 0 RB, you're like, whoa, this is probably the time to go 0 RB. If this is becoming this unpopular, we're really zagging here against the public zigging. I mean, think about all the fast running backs available in the middle rounds on top offenses, explosive running backs, Kenneth Walker, DeAndre Swift, James Cook. I talked about Pacheco, Devon Achane. As it turns out, Devon Achane runs a 4.3, and he's on one of the best offenses in the league. He was available in the double-digit rounds.
Yes.
But there were just so many. DeAndre Swift could be Kenneth Gainwell. Gainwell's also explosive, right? So if you were just throwing these darts, you're not going to hit on all of them. Like I said, you're not going to hit on a Gainwell, but you're going to hit on an A-Chain. You're not going to hit as hard on a Rashad White as you might have hit on a DeAndre Swift. I don't care, right? Just grab them all. And you were advocating for James Cook. James Cook being 200 pounds, it was harder for me to get behind a James Cook than a guy with requisite size, guy like Pacheco. But James Cook is the clear primary back, or at least he was. Watching that game against the Dolphins, I was slightly concerned, and I looked up and the snap shares revealed it, confirmed it, that I was like, did I see as much Latavius Murray as I thought I saw? I saw, why is Harris in there again? Why is he in there? And I was like, did I just see, was Murray back there again? Was that Murray running those routes? And I looked up, and I'm like, yeah, the snap shares are down for James Cook. So is there any concern there with James Cook? Because, again, these 0 RB teams are flying high. And even if a player like James Cook starts to fade as the season goes along for whatever reason, or there's injuries for whatever reason, it's still the right build. But with James Cook specifically, how are you thinking about using him, starting him week in, week out? Are you picking up Latavius Murray? What are you doing?
Yeah, I think for James Cook teams, you'd be wise to pick up Lat Murray. They seem to like Latavius Murray, and I'll say I don't worry about it too much. He had 15 carries for nearly 100 yards and 2 catches against Washington. I'm thinking that he was maybe the volume starting to catch up with him a little bit, and they didn't want to overwhelm him in a game that they thought would be physical up front. And I think it's more of a one-off game than this is the way things are going to be.
Good.
But I think that the big takeaway is Latavius Murray's way ahead of Damian Harris. Damian Harris is an afterthought, and a lot of teams thought that they could cuff Cook with Harris, should just be cuffing Cook with Latavius Murray. But like James Cook, he's never going to be a guy that is going to be a massive volume guy. But I think that the volume will be higher definitely than we saw against Miami. I'm not worried about it.
I think 15 to 20 touches in this offense is exactly what you want. You can't hope for more than that, right? You're going to get that from A-Chain. You just want 15 touches in that offense. Pacheco, give me 15 touches in that offense. If I can get 15 touches from a running back in a top 5, top 10 offense, that's all you could ever ask for, and you didn't have to draft that guy in the first 5 rounds. What a gift.
Yeah, and Matt, I love your 0 RB questions, and on the show sheet, I did a little research with this. Right now, you have 11 wide receivers averaging 17 points or more. So, like, the big difference makers are at wide receiver. And then when we take it a step down, and I like to look at guys who are 14 points per game or more. I think it's just an impactful fantasy number to look at. I don't really have the numbers to back it up, but it's always been a number I've kind of looked at with, if I can have enough starters in my lineup averaging 14 or more, I feel pretty good about my teams. There's 26 wide receivers averaging 13.9 points or more. And then there's 15 running backs averaging 13.9 points or more. But you bring up the running backs.
But most of those running backs were drafted late.
You nailed that. Raheem Mostert, Kyron Williams, Devon Achane are, all guys who were getting round. Like the highest you'd ever see Achane go was once in a while in like a round 9, round 10, most of the time round 11, round 12.
Right.
Kyron Williams getting drafted. Mostert wasn't getting drafted until, really the middle of the summer, end of the summer. So then you have, like you touched on, Ken Walker, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, Travis Etienne, and then let's throw Connor in the mix. All of those guys were going in rounds 4
James Conner and David Montgomery were not running backs I just listed because I listed explosive running backs on great offenses, right? Montgomery is on a great offense. He's not explosive. James Conner's neither, but he's just getting all the volume. And the Cardinals, man, they are exceeding expectations. That's all you could hope for. The risk with James Conner is this is going to be the worst offense in the league. They're definitely not. So James Conner's being helped by the fact that their receiving core is pretty good. Like they have a quality receiving core. They're almost above average. I wouldn't say above average yet for the Cardinals, but the Cardinals receiving core with Michael Wilson trending toward above average. And if that's what's supporting the offense's ability to sustain drives, that's great for James Conner.
Yeah. So your structural 0 RB point was right there, Matt. And, it's funny because you bring up RotoViz and some of the 0 RB zealots, those, I think they've got definitely some sharp guys over there, but the whole idea that the running backs become the value when everybody wants to draft wide receivers, whereas the big fantasy drivers are these wide receivers that are the alpha type wide receivers. And football in general now, it's a receivers game. These are the guys getting the big contracts, and a lot of teams are just devaluing having a bell cow running back in general. Like you bring up all these guys like the Ken Walkers, the DeAndre Swifts, the Pachecos, the A-Chains. These guys are going to do incredible work on like 15 to 18 touches. Yeah. And we don't really want them to get 25 carries and get ground into the ground. So it's exciting time for fantasy. It's definitely exciting if you have a couple of these wide receivers in your lineup and you did go with this strategy. So
yeah, Billy was talking to me about some of the trials and tribulations of the high stakes leagues where everybody knew that he was the most bullish on David Montgomery.
Yes.
Right. And so they would snipe him around ahead. And he was talking about how he would have to do all this game theory around when he was going to draft David Montgomery. It's like, yes, I mean, because he is the primary back that they just paid, $10 million plus to for a quality offense, a top 10 offense. It doesn't have to be hard, right? So that was like the easiest one. And then all these others are just, hey, are you in a top 10 offense? Yes. Do you run a sub 4.54? Are you explosive? Yes, we're drafting you. That's it. That's it. That's it. I don't even have to see huge reception totals. Like there's no season where James Cook has put up monster reception totals. There's no season where Devon Achane or Isaiah Pacheco has put up monster reception totals. But that's okay. That's okay because the touchdown equity with the Chiefs, with the Dolphins, with the Seahawks is so huge. Every time you look up, Kenneth Walker's usage wasn't even, wasn't that high, right? Wasn't targeted at all. That's okay. He got the touchdown, broke off a long run, done. Ship it. Fine. Good. We got him. He's fine. You're very happy. Listen, if you have Kenneth Walker, you're very happy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a hat tip to you, Matt. You were the biggest Kenneth Walker guy all off season. A lot of the Zach Charbonnet, concerns that I had on the Sonic Truth, you'd always push back. And you're right.
Charbonnet had a couple catches. Charbonnet, he was used out of the backfield as a receiver. He was this past week. It happened.
Caps the ceiling.
I'm happy to acknowledge that it appears he's a better receiver than Kenneth Walker. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. And if Travis Etienne misses games, I'll tell you that Jamichael Hasty is also a better receiver than Tank Bigsby. But the guy you're going to want is Tank Bigsby if that happens.
Tank Bigsby is down to 25% or 25% rostered. So he made my waiver wire article this week.
Get him.
Tank Bigsby is, it's that's the guy you want. I mean, I know that Jamichael Hasty, Dearness Johnson, those guys are in Jacksonville, but at the end of the day, if Etienne went down, it would be Tank Bigsby with those guys being mixed in. We believed in Tank Bigsby's profile. It just hasn't really happened.
But it's a top offense. Well, that was supposed to be. See, this is the thing. You can't have, if you do the math, 14 top 10 offenses. Like, I get it. Jacksonville actually hasn't been a top 10 offense this year, but this is an offense with deep weapons. Okay? So that's the reason. That's the thesis. This is an offense that's going to be experiencing positive game scripts. Going to be winning games. They keep defenses honest. So Tank Bigsby is one of the best running backs to stash because you know he's going to have a huge role for a top offense. He's not Rico Dowdle. I mean, Rico Dowdle, right? I'm never even going to think. I'm not going to let my mind go to a place where Tony Pollard's missing games. That's not happening.
Don't put that in the universe, Matt. Don't put that
I
out
would
there
never. But, I'm the guy with Rico Dowdle. If you're in Dynasty and you're thinking about, maybe just trolling through your league, trying to find players that might be undervalued to have as throw-ins in larger deals, I'm the guy with Dowdle, just so you know. Now, I also have some Justin Fields in Dynasty. I have some Anthony Richardson. It's weird that Anthony Richardson only throws the ball 25 times in a game where they were in total, utter comeback mode. And yet he currently is inspiring maximum confidence, right? There's not a question. If you have Anthony Richardson, you're starting him. But if you have Justin Fields, well...
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard this on top 10 takeaways, the concerns with Richardson, and I can see those. You want to see the passing volume be higher in a game where they're down this early. But I don't really have too much concerns, Matt. I mean, 2 games where he's over 60% completion rate. He's already has 4 rushing touchdowns on the season.
That's the key.
And he's also
that's the thing.
inexperienced.
Fields isn't doing that.
Yeah.
Fields is not running for 2 touchdowns in a game.
They're not running Fields at all. It makes no sense. And I know he had the really productive game this past week against Denver, but the Denver secondary and the Denver defense in general is a sieve right now. Yeah. Everybody's producing against them. But, to Fields' credit, he did have a career high in passing touchdowns, passing yards. But it's just weird to me, the lack of manufactured running attempts for Justin Fields this year. And we want to see that for fantasy. He was so dynamic with it last year. Whereas Richardson, the Colts offense really gets it. I think, we don't want to, we went on not trying to elevate these guys with Bill Belichick at the beginning of the show, but I will say, you feel really good that he's attached to Shane Steichen and they're kind of amplifying his strengths, and he's been able to do this.
It matters on the margins. We know coaching matters on the margins, absolutely. It's just not the number one reason. Shane Steichen is not the reason why Anthony Richardson is playing well.
Yeah,
right? Anthony Richardson he himself is taking care of the football, because the easiest way for him to fail would just be to fumble, to make bad decisions, to throw interceptions. He's not doing that, and they are calling design runs for him. So that's the reason, right? He's actually been a better decision maker than Justin Fields so far this season, and they're calling more design runs, and that really elevates his floor. So his floor is higher, his ceiling's higher. Yes, there's a reason why he inspires more confidence. He's also because he's a rookie. And that if it's taking Justin Fields this long to deliver consistent performances in year 3, that's a major concern. Whereas Anthony Richardson, all he's doing is delivering in the games that he's playing as a rookie.
Yeah, and we look at, it's hard to kind of go back. Obviously Justin Fields was not in a great spot. Justin Fields has been dealt a really poor hand coaching-wise in his career. The Matt Nagy and him never really meshed, and then Eberflus had such a slow start, and then we saw some success last year, but it's back to kind of weird Eberflus. Whereas, but if we compare how they are as rookies, it's not even close. So at the same point in his career, Anthony Richardson is so far ahead of rookie year Justin Fields. It's not even close. I mean, Justin Fields was a guy you were not starting at any time, whereas Richardson, you're viewing him as a guy that's definitely a top 12 quarterback, if not a top 6 one on the week. And Matt, he's going to challenge Cam Newton's record. I really believe that, because I think he'll get more and more comfortable. And I think the pass attempts are this week is tilting because Tennessee's a more difficult defense to run on. And I think they're going to have opportunities to pass the ball against this defense. I think it'll be an uptick for Pittman, an uptick for Downs, and an uptick for Richardson in terms of his pass attempts in a really big divisional matchup. I mean, both teams are 2-2, and it's a division that seems kind of open right now.
You would definitely prefer Richardson over Stroud in Dynasty?
Right now, I would, but I'm the biggest CJ Stroud stan out there right now. Yeah. I had, we talked about him on Sonic Truth. He's the guy I've been pounding the table for in the waiver wire column. All of my columns, all my podcasts, I've been like, CJ Stroud is this, and he just keeps defying expectations every single week. He looks so good.
Who's he defying? He was the 2nd pick overall. He was a prolific and efficient passer at Ohio State for 2 consecutive seasons.
Well, I don't think that there was. I think that. Well, I'll say this:
who are these people? I still. It is one of the open questions that is yet to be answered. Everyone in the chat, let me know, please, leave a comment, put it in the chat. Explain this to me. Who are these doubters? Where did this come from? When did this start? That there's problems with Stroud or concerns with Stroud. That he ended up not getting drafted 1 overall because of it, which is crazy.
Big, the S2 test should go out of business. I mean, it's the biggest joke in the world. The S2 test, apparently the guy scores poorly on the S2. He looks like the most poised rookie quarterback in terms of actually seeing the field, reading coverages, reading the pass rush. He doesn't get sacked, Matt, and he's playing behind a ragtag offensive line. We look at these guys like Daniel Jones last night, who can't recognize anything. You look at
Daniel Jones must be acing the S2 test.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Daniel Jones probably was scoring right up there with Bryce Young. But CJ Stroud, he's in a great spot right now. I think that they've gone to 11 personnel, pretty much the whole game with him, and he's able to maximize his wide receivers, of course, but he's so good at reading the blitz. He's not throwing any interceptions. He hasn't thrown a single pick in a month. I'll say this, were bullish on Stroud.
So good. This is a rookie.
We pounded the table for Stroud over Bryce Young on the Sonic Truth podcast, but this summer I said, I think he's a Kirk Cousins. And I think that was a compliment at the time. I think that the class was, there's not a Caleb Williams type in the class that we think could be break football type guy. But I said, I thought he was a Kirk Cousins type, and that's fine. I think I vastly underrated him this summer. I think he's more like a Joe Burrow type. I think CJ Stroud is Joe Burrow part 2.
Yeah, I compared him. I said his upside ceiling outcome is Aaron Rodgers.
I love it. I love that.
Aaron Rodgers had mobility coming out of Cal. Aaron Rodgers is an athlete, and they're similar size. Everything. I mean, it was. You're going to continue to see them converge because basically you're getting from Anthony Richardson what you expected. You're not getting what you expected from CJ Stroud. Even I can't say that I expected this. So you're going to see a convergence because in Dynasty, Richardson's going to give you massive Cam Newton-style production throughout his 20s. but it's going to start to tail off. Whereas the lifetime value, when you project it out 10 years, actually higher with Stroud because he's a pocket passer first and a rushing quarterback second. And those guys just age much better. It's an interesting question to ask maybe in 2 or 3 weeks if Stroud continues to just defy everybody except me. And we'll see. Eventually, it could lead to a conversation. So I'm happy to have that conversation starting now, Stroud versus Richardson. I'm also happy to have the conversation of Marvin Mims versus Quentin Johnston, because I think at this point, if you have Marvin Mims, that inspires more confidence than Quentin Johnston.
Yeah,
who would you rather have in Dynasty right now?
Marvin Mims. I think Marvin Mims is Marvin Mims was my flag plant guy this summer. This was a guy that I drafted in so many Dynasty leagues. It's been frustrating to see his usage on the amount of snaps he's playing, the amount of routes he's running, but the production has been there. He leads Denver in receiving yards right now, which is wild.
Is that true?
Yeah, he has the most receiving yards in Denver right now.
We know the story, right? We know the story of the Tyler Lockett's that take 3 years to finally break out because they're behind Doug Baldwin. We know the story, right? He's behind Jerry Jeudy. It's going to take time. But that he's breaking through all of those barriers already. Like, he's already outproduced Tyler Lockett from Tyler Lockett's rookie year.
Tyler Lockett had 6 catches, I think, in his first 3 and 12 through his first 6 games. I researched that because of the Jackson Smith and Jigba, but it applies to Marvin Mims as well. And Matt, if you start just kind of like taking a step back, Marvin Mims was more productive than Quentin Johnston. And I know people can fact check me on this, and he played in slightly more games in 3 seasons.
Well, they played 3 seasons in the Big 12, so they played against the same competition for 3 seasons. Marvin Mims, more yards, more touchdowns, more catches.
Yes. And you can fact check us. We realized that Quentin Johnston had maybe 2 less games.
Whatever!
But at the end of the day, whatever is right. Whatever is right.
God,
Marvin,
who cares?
There's been plenty of
He stinks. He can't play.
I'm not quite on the stinks
Quentin Johnston is not good at football. He's not good at football.
Get out the speaker, Matt. Scream it.
It's crazy to me. This is insane. We have our new newsletter guy, Cameron, right? So I was talking to Cameron, and he's a big Big 12 fan, right? So he follows Kansas and Kansas State, and he knows those teams, and he's like I remember watching Quentin Johnston. I don't remember thinking he was good. Right, just because he's like, so I've always been a little bit skeptical of all the stats that keep getting dropped about how fantastic and how generational Quentin Johnston is, because see, the thing is, I was watching the Big 12 all year, and I don't remember ever thinking, geez, this Quentin Johnston guy is really good. See, that's the thing, man. Sometimes it's that simple. Sometimes you're watching football and you're going, man, this Ja'Marr Chase, he looks pretty good, or this Jaylen Waddle. That's pretty special. What I'm seeing over here, or this Chris Olave, man. There's something to this guy. If you don't have that feeling about a guy and you're watching the conference every weekend, well, man, something's probably missing in the equation where you're trying to add it all up to equal stud player X. And the analysts that were touting him as the wide receiver 1, there was a bunch. There's a bunch of analysts that were touting him as a wide receiver 1, and they were even coming at me comparing him to Ja'Marr Chase because I was mocking his drops in training camp, and they were like, "Yeah, remember Ja'Marr Chase? Remember him? Yeah, look at the Podfather. What a dummy! Don't you remember Ja'Marr Chase?" And I'm like, "You do realize what you're doing, right? You're comparing Ja'Marr Chase to Quentin Johnston. Like what? This is not going to age well. You don't know what do you. So it's a combination of people that weren't watching any college football, have no awareness of college football, and are just looking at the box scores. And then you also have some that were watching college football, but they become so indoctrinated into certain advanced metrics. And it all you need to do is put one metric in front of them, and then that will convince them. And it's like, listen, man, there's not one silver bullet metric. Okay, and with Quentin Johnston, it was like yards after the catch per team target. Right? Whoever, I don't even know. Who cares? Like or yards after the catch plus air yards per team target. Some esoteric, and I'm like, that stats. It's too much for me to even get my head around. So now you're waving around stats that the guy that started Player Profiler can't really appreciate. Maybe what's happening is that you saw a guy. Maybe my suspicion is that what ended up happening was these people saw a play that they loved from Quentin Johnston, right? They saw legitimate wow factor play. And then with confirmation bias, they went looking for some stat that could best illustrate the greatness that they saw in that one play. And so when you follow the breadcrumbs back to the genesis of where the analysis started, oftentimes it's one play instead of looking at the full picture. So that the best analysis comes from when someone goes back and they look at like a full season of statistics and they sort like with our data analysis tool, right? And you sort by a bunch of different metrics. You start seeing the same guy coming up over and over again. And then you dig in further from there. The starting point is lots of information, lots of different data points. And then we can kind of drill in and see, I wonder why was he excelling in so many of these different metrics, not just yards after the catch per team air yard.
And I'll say this, like we spent a great deal of time not only at the NFL draft, but me and you and Cody Carpenter, and we were always on the Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers over Quentin Johnston. Then I think a lot of people kind of got there with us. And there was a period of time where Quentin Johnston was going to fall in rookie drafts, but then the Chargers select him where they do. He gets attached to Justin Herbert. Oh. And then you have the visions in your mind of seeing that clip of him, take off on incredible, yak play. Oh. But Matt, I'll bring it up. Like we talk about watching college football. There was not enough pushback on Quentin Johnston doing literally nothing against Georgia in the national championship game. And to his credit, he played well against Michigan. The Michigan game, he made a couple of boom plays. He got loose for one big touchdown, and TCU, everything went well. They won that game. But against those NFL defenders at Georgia, little different than what you see in the SEC. He didn't do a thing that game. I think he had one catch. I'd have to look at the box score, but that was a big red flag. And then you talk about
Mims
the size.
Had good game. Mims had good games against high-level competition against good corners.
100%. Mims in the Red River rivalry. Try to say that 3 times fast. The game against
Red
Texas.
River rivalry. Red River rivalry. Red River rivalry.
I'll say the game against Texas, the big one each year. Mims had some highlight plays against their biggest rivals. So, like Mims, the smaller wide receivers, these guys have been crushing it lately in fantasy football. And there's big alpha wide receiver types like Quentin Johnston, body types that have done very well. But there's also been a lot of busts that come with this kind of profile. I do think Quentin Johnston's going to be a longtime player in the league. He's got the draft capital. He's got the size. But I don't know if he's going to ever have impactful games for us as fantasy managers. This week coming off of the bye week will be telling, though, Matt. Like, he could turn things around off of the bye when they have a chance to self-scout. But if he doesn't get the extra work off of the bye week, that's really, really telling. Because the one game, without Mike Williams, that doesn't tell us as much as them getting to the drawing board and saying, hey, is it going to be Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnston seeing these targets, running these routes? there's a lot of self-scouting going on with Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley during the bye week, and I think that's the real story is going to be told for Quentin Johnson rest of the season.
He's fallen behind Michael Wilson. I'd rather have Michael Wilson than Quentin Johnston.
You could get Michael Wilson and a lot for Quentin Johnson right now. I think that there's still, you know, you could get
so crazy to me.
You could get you get a lot, Matt. You could get. I think you can still get Marvin Mims plus for Quentin Johnson in a lot of these dynasty leagues. Despite the Marvin Mims,
gross.
Like, there's a lot of enthusiasm on Marvin Mims for like a lot of like very smart people in dynasty like Marvin Mims. But I think at the end of the day, draft capital still matters to a lot of fantasy managers, as it should. But I think there's a draft capital lean for Quentin Johnson, the fact that he was drafted in the first round, and I think that keeps his value high. But
yeah. I mean, I draft capital matters. It's one of the reasons why I'm just so insanely bullish, to the moon bullish on Zay Flowers. He also has the draft capital. I'm not ready to give up on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like, so draft capital certainly matters, but it's also a common occurrence literally every year that NFL teams pick the wrong receiver in the first round for all the wrong reasons. When a guy like Michael Wilson doesn't have the huge counting stats because he never played a full season. He had the injury concerns, and he was at Stanford, and he wasn't on the biggest stages like Quentin Johnston was at TCU, and especially in his final year. And so just doesn't have the wow factor plays that are right in front of you, but then you go to the Senior Bowl and you see how he's matching up against the Julius Brentses of the world, the top corners, the guys that are going to be drafted in the second round by NFL teams. And he's actually going toe-to-toe with them, and he's coming down with a football. And then that is such a powerful vision when you see that. And a lot of people have been stashing him because we've been, screaming, stash this guy the last couple weeks. You do a whole dumpster dive article. Who are you dumpster diving for this? I mean, we're talking about the deep guy, the deep cut, the guy like Michael Wilson. He's getting 2 catches, 56 yards on the Cardinals. That was considered a dumpster dive pickup. A back of the roster, final bench spot guy to stash, that maybe he becomes a thing in a few weeks in these deeper leagues. He's actually anything but someone who belongs in a dumpster. He is Dynasty gold. You literally you're printing money in Dynasty with Michael Wilson. Give us another guy from your work, because you publish the waiver wire column. You also do a deep cut pickups. You have a bunch of different articles you roll out every week at Player Profiler. You're our workhorse in terms of the written content. Give us a guy. Give us a deep guy to pick up on the waiver wire.
A 1 week guy that you can plug into your lineup. Jahan Dotson picked up an ankle injury this week. Mm-hmm. He has the touchdown against Philadelphia, and Curtis Samuel started seeing a little bit more work. He had 8 targets and he had a rushing touchdown. I think if you're in a jam this week, you can put Curtis Samuel into your lineup. It's a really good matchup for Washington. It's Thursday night against the Chicago Bears in Washington, and they're definitely going to want a win. This is a winnable game. We don't know where Chicago's heads are at. And Curtis Samuel, the rush attempt is kind of telling, because if he starts getting those combined with the targets, especially if Dotson is limited or misses, then I think Samuel is going to be a play.
Whoa. If Dotson misses, then Jahmyr Brown's in play.
Jahmyr Brown, he had more receiving yardage than Dotson this week, Matt. But I don't know. I'm a
on like a third of the targets.
I think that occasionally there's games last year where Washington kind of wanted to set the tone early and impose their will with Samuel. And I think a home Thursday night game kind of screams a Curtis Samuel game for me. And then
on the waiver wired show, I said this is a very unique week where you can actually do a double stack, all stream double stack, where you could put in Howell at quarterback. It's the best streaming option on the waiver wire this week is Sam Howell, because CJ Stroud's been picked up everywhere.
Yeah.
Curtis Samuel at wide receiver. You flex Curtis Samuel, and at tight end, Logan Thomas.
the all-in against Chicago stack that no
all
one wants
Chicago
to do,
stack stream that stack, baby.
Keaton Mitchell will be in the in the sleepers article. Keaton Mitchell, I'm interested to see if he gets any work this week. It's more of a stash him than use him week, but Keaton Mitchell's interesting. Billy Muzio has a ton of Keaton Mitchell. I have a ton of Keaton Mitchell. It's a guy we've been writing about or talking about on Player Profiler for like a few weeks now, and now you're starting to see other sites and kind of like the ESPN types starting to mention Keaton Mitchell. A couple of big, a couple of big names are on Keaton Mitchell. I forget which one it was, but there's I want to say Matthew Berry referenced Keaton Mitchell
Matthew
this
Berry.
week.
Yeah, he's with NBC now. Keaton Mitchell, 1,400 plus yards, 7.2 yards per carry in his final year in college.
4.37,
27 catches. East Carolina.
It's more of an indictment on the other running backs there, I think, as anything. But Keaton Mitchell was 6 yards a carry in the preseason. And Todd Monken, it seems like he wants to do some dynamic things and not just run quarterback draws every play. And I think you might have some flexibility with Keaton Mitchell that you don't have with Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. And I'll say this, Matt, you've been doing this for a while. Baltimore self-scouts their players more than anyone. This is a team that went Mark Andrews ahead of Hayden Hurst really quickly, where a lot of organizations would have deferred to their first-round tight end and given him way more room to fail. And Gus Edwards came out of literally nowhere. The beat reporters were not even on Gus Edwards when he made his big, debut game and then became a waiver wire darling a few years back. And it kind of reminds me of that, where they're not that comfortable with their running backs right now. Gus Edwards has been a little banged up and he's been okay. Justice Hill can't stay on the field. And, we're looking at a possibility of Keaton Mitchell being impactful. And then my final guy is Josh Downs, because I think Josh Downs is closer to the guy who had 12 targets with Gardner Minshew than the guy who was invisible this past week. Michael Pittman was also invisible this past week. I think the passing game will be a little bit better. I want to have Josh Downs on some rosters. I think he could be an interesting play this week. I think that Tennessee, you can beat them through the air a lot more easy than you can beat them on the ground. And Josh Downs was a guy who had a lot of touchdowns and big plays in college. I think that people that don't follow college football might think that he's just like your standard slot receiver that's not going to do a whole lot. I think he's got a couple of big plays in him. So I like to look at guys who are rostered in 20% or less of Yahoo leagues for this. And all three of those guys kind of fit that bill. A lot of them will slip through waivers. You'll be able to grab them as free agents in a lot of home leagues.
Yeah, Keaton Mitchell
I'm on
for sure.
Of those guys. Yeah, Keaton Mitchell's the biggest long-term potential guy that I listed. I have Keaton Mitchell in my top 10 waiver wire ads this week on the site. He's got the juice, Matt, and it's kind of like the unknown factor. You saw it with Jaleel McLaughlin this week. These smaller backs that can run. You brought up all of these successful guys. Pacheco's a beast, but you bring up Devon Achane, James Cook, these smaller backs who are very fast in good offenses, delivering us fantasy performances with maybe 12 to 15 touches. Keaton Mitchell can do that.
He runs a 4.37.
4.37 for sure.
4.37. Justice Hill only has one game this year. Did you know that Justice Hill only has one game this year with a single catch?
It's wild times. And we saw
he's
the first
just not
game.
The receiver that we thought he could be in the league. That's the weakness. Like, I think that the coaches have questioned his ball security, and I don't care about that. I want him commanding some targets out of the backfield, and he only has one game with a catch this year. It's not good enough. And Keaton Mitchell is eventually gonna take over that role. And yeah, Gus Edwards, not impressive. Justice Hill, not impressive. Melvin Gordon, get out of here. Right? It's funny.
Toast.
There's three guys ahead of him on the depth chart. Is Melvin Gordon still around?
Melvin Gordon could get relegated at any moment, and they can move on.
Melvin Gordon. I'm just saying. I just want to make sure he was he didn't get hurt. Right. Every time I list these guys in the chat, someone's like, "You didn't know Melvin Gordon left with a high ankle sprain." I didn't know. But the bottom line is, this is the most fragile three running backs that are ahead of any given running back on the depth chart. Like, if you plucked any fourth running back off a depth chart around the league, whatever it is, Trey Sermon, whoever it is, right? No one would even come close to having the fragility ahead of them that Keaton Mitchell has, what he's looking at. Justice Hill has had a difficult time, with injuries. Gus Edwards hasn't seen the field in a year and a half. We've just talked about Melvin Gordon, always hurt the last couple of years. So for whether it's ineffectiveness or injury, there's so many ways that Keaton Mitchell can see the field, and also it just helps that he's super explosive and he's just athletic, and that they're eventually going to want the guy that has the ability to deliver the biggest play to have the ball.
You also have, like, isn't it like you have to have a couple weeks of the year where the Baltimore Ravens running back is like the guy from out of left field, completely random. You have the Devonta Freeman few weeks where he's like a high-end RB3. You had the Tyson Williams 2 weeks. I mean, you've had all these weird guys.
Great pull, Tyson Williams.
Harbaugh just can't, there's somewhere in the multiverse, J.K. Dobbins is like RB5 for like the last 2 seasons, and everything worked out well in his career. And we weren't having these discussions on like what random guy is going to start for Baltimore this week at running back. But it constantly happens to Harbaugh teams. And I think it's going to happen again this year. I think you get a few weeks where you're starting Keaton Mitchell, as random as that sounds. I think if they didn't like Keaton Mitchell, they would have gone and got somebody better than Melvin Gordon off the street.
All right. 10 burning questions coming up with Theo Gremminger after this. You by Rival Fantasy. Rival Fantasy, the coolest fantasy platform not enough people know about, but they will once I'm done, baby, because they're always innovating. They just rolled out seasonal leagues. We set them up for patrons, for our listeners, and they funded over $1,000 in payouts. That's what Rival's all about. They're always innovating. They already had the fantasy book where you can take overs and unders, stack them up, multiply your payout, but then they added challenges so you can set your own lines and put them out there for the community, and then you can browse the community's lines and say, hey, this guy's crazy, I'm going to take the other side. It's cool. And they have fantasy bingo. Rival Fantasy is reminding me how much fun I can have with fantasy football, and use that promo code PLAYER. The promo code is PLAYER. They give you a $100 instant deposit match plus $25 plus a free play. That promo code is PLAYER for up to $125 in deposit bonus and a free play. You can't beat it. 10 burning questions. 10 burning questions for Theo Gremminger. I thought that we would be at this point in the show half an hour ago. I was like, Theo, I'm going to get you out of here. Don't worry. It's going to be a short show. You're doing me a favor. Yeah, I know you're busy. Don't worry, I'll get you. But then you said to me, that's not going to happen. We're going to end up, I was like, there's no way. And you're like, oh yeah, we'll be an hour and a half in before we get to the 10 burning questions. Sure enough, you were right. Now, give me the player, the wide receiver that you consider to be the fakest alpha in the league. And you can't say Michael Pittman, because Michael Pittman is for real. Michael Pittman's going to bounce back in a big way. All this guy does is command the targets, provide the requisite level of efficiency. It's been a bad offense for number one wide receivers, whether it's just bad quarterback play overall. Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz. Now he's got a mobile quarterback who's going to run it whenever he gets in trouble. So the volume is never going to be as high as it could be in another offense for Michael Pittman. But I don't want to hear that he's a fake alpha, because I've heard that, and it's every kind of wrong. He is the real deal. But there are players that many in the community believe are better than Michael Pittman that I believe are complete frauds, and they're fake.
Well, Matt, I thought you had, anybody, I highly recommend that you listen to Top 10 Takeaways from yesterday.
It was a good show.
You talked about Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy were good answers. You went with the Alabama betas. I thought that was a good term, and it made sense.
Alabama betas!
Both those guys make sense on here. I think that the idea of Jerry Jeudy is more than what Jerry Jeudy is. shout out to Alan Soslowski this summer in Sonic Truth, trying to tell us that Jerry Jeudy was going to be, like the top 5, top 6 receiver. You pushed back on that one. You were right. But I'll keep it.
Alan, come on. Come on. Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty? Gross. I have never had any Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty. I never will have any Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty. And for that reason, when I look up and I see Jerry Jeudy in the box score, I smile.
I still have a little bit of Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty. It's not. I don't feel great about it though, Matt. But I'll say I'll keep it.
I don't feel great about it.
I'll keep it at Alabama, and I'll say that to me, one of the more overrated players this year in terms of ADP was Amari Cooper. And I think Amari Cooper, like you bring up Michael Pittman. Michael Pittman has been producing this year. He produced last year. Obviously coming off of a difficult week, but Michael Pittman has been like one of those guys where if you drafted Michael Pittman at ADP, you feel very good about what you've gotten so far. If you drafted Amari Cooper at ADP, you have 1 week. And I'll say this, he had one very, very good week, last week. In the first game back without Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper has a wide receiver 10 overall week. He also had in week 17 a wide receiver, I believe he was like wide receiver 2 overall. So he has 2 big-time games since Deshaun Watson took over in Cleveland.
It's bad.
In every other game,
not good.
He's failed to give you one top 24 or better week. So people remember like the really good weeks, but and this was the case in Dallas. You'd have a really big week, and then you'd have the inconsistency. And I think that was the frustrating thing about Amari Cooper. I think he's not a real alpha. And I think you're seeing it now.
I was shocked at how behind consensus we were with Amari Cooper. I remember even emailing Billy about it.
Billy and I were on this the whole summer.
I was like, listen, guys, are we sure we want to be this low on Amari Cooper? And you guys, yeah. And I was like, well, to be honest, when I'm in draft rooms, I'm not considering him at ADP at all, because the move is if Deshaun Watson is going to have a resurgence, the big winner is going to be Elijah Moore anyway. You might as well just go with Elijah Moore many rounds later. They should be a lot closer in ADP if we knew that Deshaun Watson was going to be vintage Deshaun Watson. We don't even know that. So the assumptions built into the Amari Cooper ADP were, one, surefire, no doubt, Deshaun Watson is going to be Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, number one. And number two, that Amari Cooper is the clear alpha, and he's going to command a much higher target share than Elijah Moore. I wasn't sure about that either. So there were multiple ways that Amari Cooper could really hurt you, and I didn't see the other side. I didn't see how avoiding Amari Cooper could hurt me. I only saw ways that drafting him could hurt me.
Yeah. There was a period of time in the summer where people were taking Amari Cooper over Keenan Allen. I mean, there was a lot of drafts, if you go back and look at these boards, where you take him over Keenan Allen, and then there was almost like everyone was taking him over like the Brandon Ayuk and Michael Pittman below that tier.
Oh,
so
course.
it's Cooper is just I think
the
when
case
we go
for
back,
Pittman was the easiest.
Yeah.
The case for Pittman was because he's going to be the clear number one. Yes, the volume's not going to be there, but he's going to make up for it because it's Josh Downs. I know you love Josh Downs, and you said pick up Josh Downs, but the bottom line is a guy that you're talking about dumpster dive stashing is their number two. That's all I need to say, bro. There's a big difference in target competition in Indianapolis versus Cleveland. So that's an easy case, and I agree with you 100%. I asked the question, in good faith. Like I believe it's Ridley. I had the same doubts about drafting Ridley in the third round. I know he gets steamed up to the second round of the NFFC and other places. He was going second round, sometimes mid-second round in some formats. Crazy. That's true. That's a thing that happened. I looked it up. And I just couldn't. It was nauseating, the idea. I was like, this is too risky, man. Like, why are he and Kirk not converging in the ADP? Right? Why is Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper so far apart in ADP. If you can't get your head around it, if you can't figure it out, just avoid. There's plenty of great options at wide receiver. You can just draft Devontae Smith and you're fine. Just draft Devontae Smith, draft Chris Olave, and these are players we knew could not fail because they were given the situations that they were in. One, the clear number one, and it was going to be an upgraded offense, a quarterback upgrade for Chris Olave, and another, one of the best offenses in the league as the clear number two. It was very straightforward, very straightforward. Now, I have a real difficult question for you. It's something that we're going to talk about on multiple shows, I'm sure. Cooper Kupp is nearing a return. Puka Nacua has played the easiest possible schedule that you could ever dream up for a wide receiver in terms of secondary he's facing, the outside corners that he was facing or not facing. Is Puka Nacua a dynasty sell?
I think that you can't be cut or dry on this one, Matt. I think that if somebody's willing to pay you what his production has shown and his age, and they're willing to treat him like, an elite prospect and pay you in that regard, then sure.
Well, that's it, though. But everyone feels that way now. Unless everyone isn't on Twitter.
Yeah.
That's my problem. See, part of my problem is that I consume a lot of Twitter or X, and and I see some trades going on in my leagues, and I assume that's the world. I assume that if I had Puka Nacua, that market would just manifest. But that's not how Dynasty works, unfortunately.
Yeah, I haven't seen too many Puka Nacua trades. I saw one or two trades early on, but since the consistency with the production, I haven't seen it. I did see one trade where it was after Devon Achane's big week, where Puka Nacua was offered straight up for Devon Achane. And I think that's an interesting pivot, maybe a positional pivot.
You can get more.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You can get more. You can get more because the view is that this is the next great wide receiver. This is Jerry Rice, right? And wide receivers carry more value than running backs because A, they produce for a longer period of time in their career, and B, they're less susceptible to the volatility of contract negotiations, which we're seeing with running backs. They're less susceptible to injuries. So you should be able to get a lot. And I'm not saying you trade him for baseline value. I'm saying you put him on the block and you see if there's someone out there who's all the way bought in, because he's been historic. I mean, no rookie receiver has ever commanded this number of targets and caught this many passes to start a career. It's never happened.
Yeah, it's also interesting because you have the dichotomy of if you drafted pretty well, and Puka Nacua was a guy that was on your roster before the season, you might be 4-0. And if you added Puka Nacua as a waiver wire ad after week one, you still might be 4-0. So whether it's redraft or dynasty, you might be sitting on a team that's at the top of the league, and then it becomes an interesting argument whether I should kind of break this thing up. Dynasty's so layered. Redraft less so, but dynasty is so layered, Matt, where it's not about just collecting, draft picks and about, getting my roster better and better and better and stronger top to bottom. It's also about winning the current league I'm in. And we haven't seen Cooper Kupp back on the field yet, showing what he was last year and the year before. I also think there's a chance that Puka Nacua just is a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1, and it's just a very consolidated target share. So
it's Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, and Puka Nacua is Anquan Bolden, and Cooper Kupp is Larry Fitzgerald. This is very possible. In fact, I believe that Cooper Kupp is trending toward Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald had these devastating hamstring injuries in his late 20s, early 30s. And then they had an aging quarterback that was thought to be dust, and then he had a a renaissance in Arizona, just like Matthew Stafford is now experiencing a renaissance. He's also leading the league in pass attempts, right? So the comp that you need to be worried about, the most worrying comp for Puka Nacua, is Juju Smith-Schuster.
There you go.
Juju Smith-Schuster had a 1,400-yard season in his second year in the league, but he came out early. So in the same age, when Juju is the same age that Puka Nacua is right now, he put up 1,400 yards with an aging pocket passing quarterback who just happened to lead the league in pass attempts that year, with a similar athletic profile, similar route inventory, and sharing a field with a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Antonio Brown. It all tracks. It all tracks. That is the nightmare scenario for anyone in Dynasty, that you actually think you have Jerry Rice, but you actually have Juju instead. And so if you are 4-0, my recommendation is, if we're just trying to do the most basic, like 1-for-1, what would you take for player X, not packaging, nothing like that, just go get Stefon Diggs. Right? Just if you are 4-0, you should be doing everything you can to move Puka to get Stefon Diggs.
I can see that. I think trading Puka up to get or Puka in a package to try to go get an AJ Brown. A trade.
Well,
up.
AJ Brown's 26.
He's too insulated.
So he's another tier up in Dynasty. The reason I specifically said Stefon Diggs is because Stefon Diggs is approaching 30. So yeah. Stefon Diggs, he's a year younger than Devontae Adams, and he has total and complete nuclear upside. Any given week, he can be the reason why you win the championship.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. Again, Puka Nacua is like nothing we've ever seen. I think, like you talked about the Juju Smith-Schuster corollary. I think about the Amon-Ra St. Brown end of rookie season.
Well, that's that. That is the positive end. There's a spectrum, right? There's a spectrum of comps. On the most positive outcome has to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you are flying high. If that's what Puka Nacua ends up becoming in the next year or 2 years. In 2025, if you look up and you have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're thrilled. But it's possible you have Juju Smith-Schuster. We'll find out together. We're all going to find out together. The only difference is that Juju is a better athleticism comp for Puka, that neither Puka nor Juju have that Amon-Ra explosiveness. So that's the only difference. Now, when are we going to see Jonathan Taylor?
This one's interesting. I don't think we're going to see him until week 8. They have the 21-day window now to bring him back. They can still have him with team activities, kind of the get him back acclimated loophole. And I think that gives them flexibility to make a trade if they are going to trade him. I don't have optimism for him coming back before then. I think that gives them enough time to kind of either have him be back in the fold or to move on without him. And I think there's a lot of different, trains of thought on this with Taylor, but I'll tend to take the pessimistic one. Week 8 is the they have to do something within the next 21 days, and I think week 8 makes the most sense. I don't know, though. I think there's so much indecision with this. It's such a weird scenario where Taylor wanted to move on, asked for the trade, now he's going to come back, and I don't know. There's so much weirdness with it. And I'll say the trade
that
market
week 3
for him,
Zach Moss performance expedited this whole negotiation.
Yeah. And I think that there's less of a trade market for Jonathan Taylor now because Miami was the team that made the most sense. And Miami is not going to go giving up the farm when they have Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert. And that's been good enough to drop a 70 burger on another team. So, like,
oh, Pa, we're not going to give up the farm, are we, Pa?
Green Bay, Los Angeles Rams, a couple of teams like that are still, definitely kicking the tires on Taylor, and they would make a ton of sense. But I don't know. I don't think Indianapolis necessarily knows, Matt. I think if they can make
Les Snead would absolutely do this.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
this
mean,
makes a lot of sense for the Rams. Wow, no more Cam Akers. That's interesting. I mean, they're 2-2. Man, the Rams win this week. Woo!
Rams have a big one. Philadelphia coming into town. Puka, Kyron Williams.
If
They're
they
2-2.
could somehow
Yeah.
find a way to beat the Eagles, Les Snead's going to go trade for Jonathan Taylor. Now, that's my favorite, like, unfalsifiable hypothetical because it's not going to happen. And the Eagles' personnel, unit by unit, is just so superior to the Rams. It's not going to happen. But I can say, if it happens, this is then definitely going to happen. It makes sense. Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. But so are you thinking about trading for Jonathan Taylor at all, or are you just wait and see?
I'm a wait and see. I have some Jonathan Taylor in redraft from when he really fell on a couple of teams where we just couldn't resist it.
Yeah.
We have one really, really big high stakes team. Shout out to Dan Williamson, a team that I split with Dan and Andrew Schellenberg. And we took Jonathan Taylor. I forgot where he fell to us somewhere like really late. It's like the 7th round, something like that. And
Yeah.
our team is off to a red hot start. And Jonathan Taylor is just sitting there.
Oh,
And then I
that's
have
the best.
Yeah.
If
it's
you're
it's
hot, if you have a hot start and you have Jonathan Taylor in reserve,
it's nothing better. It's
That
nothing
feels
better.
good.
But I'm still
after what
I'm still
after
going
you've
to take
seen
the
from Zach Moss, you're gonna love what could be. If that's what Zach Moss is a slug. So
Yes.
if you think if Zach Moss can go out and give you 100 total yards, then Jonathan Taylor will give you 200 with the Alfred Morris corollary. You have RG3 freezing linebackers that allows Alfred Morris to average 5 yards a carry. And if you're not going to get the dump offs, and Taylor won't, at least more efficiency as a runner, the touchdowns. When are we going to see Jahmyr Gibbs?
Oof, Matt, this is a tough one for me. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that I'm not pulling the panic button yet. Again, Jahmyr Gibbs is still projected to have over 75 targets, projected to have over 100 carries. It's not like it was like a fantasy Twitter funeral the other night when David Montgomery comes in and has the smash game, and Jahmyr Gibbs, a lot of people had inside their top 12 at the position this week. David Montgomery is supposed to miss, and then he plays, and you're seeing David Montgomery drop 3 touchdowns, and Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously disappointed. But even in this game, he has 4 receptions. He scores 9.5 PPR points. It's not the outcome that we want at the beginning of the season, but I'm a huge Jahmyr Gibbs talent believer, and I do believe that at some point that talent's going to shine and they're going to start using him more. We saw with Amon-Ra St. Brown his rookie year, Matt, he starts getting more opportunities throughout the year, and then they lean on him towards the end of the season. We've seen this with the Dan Campbell coach team before. They've said that they're not going to force feed him. I think there's a little bit of a kind of an earn it mentality with this coaching staff, and certainly Dan Campbell's an old school football guy.
Okay.
But I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is still a talented guy. I think right now you have to treat him more like a RB3 than you could anything else. And I think, I'm going to throw him in the flex on certain weeks, but it's not great, Matt. It's not great. It's not
great.
It's not great. As good as Montgomery, like I have a lot of Montgomery in redraft, but on Dynasty, I have so much Jahmyr Gibbs, and those were looking like teams that were going to be big time contending teams a couple weeks ago. And now a couple of these teams look like teams kind of stuck in the mud, but I'm not throwing the towel in. I do believe in the talent profile, and I do believe that he will see an expanded role as the season moves along in terms of, his ability to help the team and help the offense. And I'll say this, Matt, the Jameson Williams return, I think helps the entire offense because it adds another element of speed to the wide receiver position. And I think it helps the pie grow larger for everyone. I think we're not pounding the table for Jameson Williams.
No.
I know that, at all. And we talked about this on the Sonic Truth podcast. We're not like Jameson Williams believers, but stylistically,
No, not at all.
Stylistically, though, I think he helps the other guys because I think that having that sort of a deep threat and that sort of speed added to an already potent offense, I think this helps everybody. So I'm going to take an optimistic approach to Gibbs. I'm willing to kick the tires on him on a couple of trades on teams that I could support it. And that's it. I'm just going to sit back and believe that this will happen and we'll get a bit more of a role. And also, Matt, we've already seen David Montgomery miss a game.
Oh.
David Montgomery's already had the injury bug open up. If he misses to time further, we saw Jahmyr Gibbs run the ball well against Atlanta. He was very successful running the ball. And I think that the coaching staff showed enough reliance on him in that game to give him the necessary carries. So they believe in that. And we know he's a capable receiver. So he's had one game where he ran the ball well, and he's had another game where we've seen him get 9 targets. So there's a few positives mixed in there, but it's just not the overwhelming usage. But Matt, we've done this for a while, and a lot of these rookie running back stories are not told in the first month of the year. Jonathan Taylor, Ken Walker, a number of our big rookie success stories have been guys that don't really do a lot in the first month, and then all of a sudden, the second half of the year, they're locked into our lineup. So
finally, you made a good point. Jesus,
I
was waiting for you to come up with something.
I was
like, when is he gonna get? Can please, Theo, convince me. That was a good point. Yeah, it was blasphemy for me to bring up players like Kenyon Drake from the past when talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, how dare you? He was a second-round pick. Yeah, an early second-round pick. Alabama satellite back with explosiveness that didn't fire with the Dolphins. Okay, fine. Don't listen to me. It's fine. Don't listen to me. You keep drafting him. That's cool. That ADP was wild, especially the ADP. It's very similar when we talked about some wide receivers where it just didn't make sense, like Ridley and Christian Kirk, that ADP dichotomy. Same thing with the Gibbs and Montgomery, where it was clear that it's training camp hype, it's rookie fever, it's all the things that we know intellectually are not predictable. They're not predictive, and yet we still do it. We can't help it. I'm susceptible. We're all susceptible to it, right? I was thrown by clips of Kenny Pickett practicing with the running backs, right? That got me. Everybody can get got by this kind of thing. It's football. It's fun, but we try our best. Again, we put enough people that have skin in the game. A lot of high-stakes leagues, a lot of high-stakes teams, the deep end, the fantasy empire. A lot of people come on, and I guessed with a lot of these, and it helps keep me checked, right? Keep me checked. And I have a guy in the chat going, hey, I want to trade Chris Olave. I'm done with Chris Olave. What kind of running back should I ask for from Chris Olave? And my answer to that is Christian McCaffrey. Okay? If you want to trade Olave, you better get Christian McCaffrey. All right? So you're not trading Chris Olave. Get the hell out of here. If you want a running back, I get a better idea. Why don't you go buy low on Dameon Pierce? Dameon Pierce is the greatest buy, and I don't even like him. Like, I wasn't pounding the table for Dameon Pierce. We talk about all these running backs in the middle rounds. Pacheco, Walker, James Cook, Rashad White. I was never like, oh, you really, this is the guy you got to get, right? Now I'm looking up, and one of the reasons why was the early season schedule, by the way, right? And now I'm looking up going, ooh, this is a prolific offense. This guy's going to score a lot of touchdowns. And he's just had really bad luck so far, really bad, the worst touchdown luck. And it's going to be on for Dameon Pierce. When you see an offense exceeding expectations, your first inclination, your first instinct should not be to go get that quarterback. No, it's the running back. Even if it's the passing game that is the thing that's driving the offense, your first instinct should be, touchdown equity. Let's go get Dameon Pierce, right?
Yeah, no, I like the Dameon Pierce call. I saw that in your show sheet, Matt, and you're right. It's a back that's had success last year, that's off to a slow start, but the usage is there, and it's actually a much better offense than we thought it was going to be. And if you're going to go trade for him, you're going to end up having to give up less than you would have in terms of the draft capital you would have had to spend for him in redraft. So I like going and kicking the tires for Dameon Pierce. My buy low trade guy was Chris Godwin. who I think could be heading in the right direction.
Oh, God, yes.
Slow first 3 weeks.
15 targets a game. Get ready for it.
And if Mike Evans misses, first of all, Tampa Bay's in a bye week. So we could find out something with Mike Evans' hamstring anytime now.
He'll miss a game. I predict one game. In that game, Godwin's going to get 15 targets.
Yeah, and Godwin, I think everything will kind of even out a little bit, where Mike Evans, I think, is playing fantastic, but he's not going to end up as a wide receiver 1. They're going to end up a little bit closer in fantasy scoring than they're showing now. And Chris Godwin, I think people are just not that enthusiastic about. And Matt,
heading into the bye week, though, that's such a clever tactic.
Baker Mayfield also, if I'm in a superflex league, I'm kicking the tires on Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is quarterback 14 on the year. He had 3 passing touchdowns. The Bucs are 3-1. The whole notion he's going to lose his job to Kyle Trask is not happening. The Bucs are looking like a playoff team. Their only loss is to Philadelphia. And Baker Mayfield is getting so many rushing opportunities. He's had like close to, I think, 25 plus rushing opportunities this season. It's wild. He's had 2 games with 8 carries. They're using Baker Mayfield and his rushing ability. That hasn't shown up in the box scores, but that matters. It insulates him. It gives him a floor. So
there's another guy. He's what I wanted Kenny Pickett to be. There's 3 quarterbacks not named Kenny Pickett that are being Kenny Pickett around the league.
Josh Dobbs and Baker Mayfield for the Superflex win.
Dobbs, Mayfield, Sam Howell, all giving me what I wanted from Kenny Pickett Sr.
That's right.
God damn it. Okay, who'd you rather have in Dynasty, Nico Collins or Jackson Smith and Jigba?
I'm taking my medicine this week. I podcasted with Billy Muzio yesterday. We have a famous bet. I have Jackson Smith and Jigba in the preseason, finishing as a wide receiver 3, and Matt's giving it to me. Nico Collins looks great. Nico Collins is my guy this summer. Nico Collins is a guy that I draft a lot of. I have a lot of in Dynasty. He's a guy that we believed in the size, speed, profile. I liked him as a rookie. It just hasn't really happened yet. But now you're seeing a player with his talent in a better scheme with an exponentially better quarterback, and it's starting to really come together. Nico Collins is, obviously had his massive, massive game this past week, but he's one of the wide receivers, Matt, that we talked about that are averaging 17 points or more, and it's clicking. And Matt,
skyrocketing up the Dynasty rankings on Player Profiler. Nico Collins, time to get on board. And one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on CJ Stroud is when a quarterback is able to fully leverage his alpha wide receiver. Think about Justin Herbert with Mike Williams. That is an indicator that he can use the whole field and he has the confidence to throw wide receivers open, to throw the back shoulder. Those are not the throws that the average quarterback is making.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he's the real deal. He elevates these guys.
The replacement level quarterbacks don't make those throws. Even the Kirk Cousins of the world don't make those throws on a regular basis. That's what differentiates the Joe Burrows and the Justin Herberts from the Kirk Cousins, from the Baker Mayfields. It's their ability to consistently push the ball to the boundary and to use those alpha receivers. And when I look up and I keep seeing Nico Collins putting up 100-plus yards, that to me is such a strong signal that C.J. Stroud is for real, for real.
Absolutely. And Nico Collins is the kind of guy that I don't think the Dynasty market's fully moved on. I think that there's some people that are going to be looking to get out. And I think that he's going to end up at the end of the year, Matt, he's going to be like wide receiver 19. And he's going to have a long-term success in this league. Matt, quick comment. We've lowered our prices at Player Profiler. So if you want access to our Dynasty rankings, you want access to our weekly rankings by Billy Muzio, Dario Offstein, you want access to all of the tools we offer you, it's $85 now, Matt.
Yeah, the rankings are now $30. They were $45. This is for the rest of the season. And yeah, all in package down from $135 to $85. You're welcome. That was Theo's idea. Appreciate it, Theo. A few more questions. We're going to go rapid fire. More fantasy points this year. Terrace Marshall or Jahan Dotson?
Oof, Matt. Oof. I want to say Terrace Marshall, but I'm going to go Jahan Dotson.
Fair enough. Sam Laporta, will he reach tight end 1 in Dynasty this season?
The off season. He's going to reach tight end 2 though. He's going to steam up our ratings. He's going to reach tight end 2. But Mark Andrews looks so good. I called you the other night, Matt, and we talked about this. This was like the phone calls we talk about where I'm so into Sam Laporta. I say, Matt, we talk about dynasty rankings a lot, but Laporta is absolutely the real deal. But the Mark Andrews Lamar Jackson connection is as real as it's ever been. The Ravens offense is quality. Mark Andrews is going to challenge for tight end 1 overall this year. Hard to take him off of tight end 1. TJ Hawkinson's the interesting one, Matt. TJ Hawkinson had a dud game this past week. He had 2 catches. He was 17 points per game heading into week 4, kind of really fell off. There's a chance Sam Laporta passes Hawkinson over the next few weeks. Laporta is absolutely the real deal. I love Laporta. He checks off all of the boxes, including production. It's not just some young player where we're like, oh my gosh, the profile. It's the production too. He's had 3 weeks of tight end 8 or better this early in the year. Laporta is it. Laporta is going to be tight end 2 by the end of the year. He's already tight end 4 for us. Highly recommend you subscribe to the All-In package and see the rest of our dynasty rankings.
And Jaylen Waddle has to come down. It's a make or miss league, man. It's a make or miss league. And he's missing more often than he's making. And the boom upside is not happened. He had a 40-point week early in the season last year. The year before, he did it with targets and yak. Last year, he did it with air yards and efficiency. He's had different ways. Like, he's so versatile. He has multiple ways that he can get there and deliver a top 15 wide receiver season. But it's always been the case. It's not changed. That it is the Tyreek Hill passing game, and he is the other guy. He's very much the Robin to Tyreek Hill's Batman, and it was always a lot to pay for Robin in fantasy drafts. And we have machine learning that drives our dynasty lifetime value engine, and Jaylen Waddle is coming down, though he's not someone I'm putting on the block because Tyreek Hill is also 30. So, Jaylen Waddle is a great player, not worried, though I do think it's time to stash Braxton Berrios, right?
Yeah, I like the Braxton Berrios call. I heard you talk about him on your other pods. Berrios they don't have a tight end. They don't pass to the tight end. Berrios is kind of de facto low ADOT tight end routes. Jaylen Waddle's interesting, though, Matt, because he has produced big time for 2 years, and he did it in different ways. He had the 100 reception season as a rookie, and then he had the 75 reception where he went nuts on yards per catch, was like 18.1, one of the most explosive players in football. So he might fall a little bit, but I think he's a locked-in wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. But yeah, if he got off to a fast start, you could be talking about him as like wide receiver 6. You just can't put him over a Garrett Wilson type who's getting 14 targets. And he is insulated with volume. But I do believe in the Waddle talent.
He's fine. Yeah. He's fine. Yeah. He's fine, but he's coming down. It's not the catastrophe that is Kyle Pitts, right? Kyle Pitts catastrophe.
Kyle Pitts is a massive catastrophe.
I mean, this is
I was offered Kyle Pitts and Kyron Williams for Sam Laporta in a dynasty trade in tight end premium like a day ago, and I didn't even counter it. I can't get rid of Sam Laporta in any trade with.
You just outright rejected it with Kyron Williams in there too.
I can't do it.
Is it win now mode? You would win now mode with getting Kyron Williams would be a valuable piece.
I'm neutral, but I think that going from Laporta down to Pitts, I truly think that Pitts is going to be.
This is something we're even saying. This is
I know.
Funny.
It's wild.
This is
it's
really.
Wild.
I mean, it's not funny for Kyle Pitts and his family.
No, but Jonnu Smith, Matt. Jonnu Smith is getting the production we wanted from Kyle Pitts. It's almost like a cruel joke. Arthur Smith is a sicko.
I love it.
He's a sicko.
I love it. I have so much more Jonnu Smith than Kyle Pitts. I'm not even. That's a truther. That's a truther of mine. Jonnu Smith. Who? Give me your top truther.
Gosh, I mean, I really think that it's probably Keaton Mitchell, and Chuba Hubbard was a guy I was truther for.
Okay, there you go.
Chuba on so many.
There we go.
I have a lot of Chuba Hubbard.
Answer. Chuba Hubbard. Thank you. Chuba Hubbard. He's a better player than Miles Sanders, right?
And Miles Sanders has a double injury. We don't like to see that from anybody.
Ooh.
Certainly not the groin and the pec injuries at the same time. And Chuba Hubbard had more snaps than him. He outgained him on the ground. Neither one did anything. It's a terrible offense. But for whatever reason, throughout the years, I've kind of collected Chuba Hubbard shares here and there for like a rainy day. It never happened. It started with handcuffing Christian McCaffrey, and now I just have a bunch of Chuba Hubbard, and it might pay off, Matt.
Oh, it will. Oh, it will. Don't you doubt it. Don't you doubt it. It's going to happen. Okay, give me a bold prediction. Bold prediction. Get you out of here.
Bold prediction. I think that it's not that bold, but I think that
come on,
that Miami's
you can't start with this.
Okay.
Not bold.
I don't think it's. I don't. Well, it's not. Okay, the Miami Dolphins are going to put up 650 yards of total offense. They're not going to break 700, but they're going to absolutely put it on the New York Giants this week. That's why I'm saying it's not that bold, but that was my big takeaway looking at the weekly usage. Give me your bold prediction, Matt.
Oh, just go. The show's over.